am your trainer for today's session. The title of that session is that I will be teaching you and I will be training you on how to write the report or assessment for unit number 3 of OTHM Level 7 Diploma in Environmental and Sustainability Management. The unit 3 title is Environmental Management in Organizations. We will be exploring a little bit about this diploma in order to give some introduction to the newcomers that we have, so that they understand what the diploma is about, and a little bit of other details about it. Okay, so starting with, I just mentioned the name of the diploma, and OTHM, as you all know, is a UK-based accreditation body, which basically allows students and learners to pass and go through different diplomas. This diploma has about 120 credit hours, out of which 600 hours are the ones in which the trainings are provided to you, different types of tutorships are provided to you in order to make you learn the content. The duration of this diploma is an entire 1 year. The diploma started in January 2024 and it is expected to end in December 2024. And it basically comes under the subject area or the broad subjective of environmental conservation, under which we have this diploma on environmental and sustainability management. And the grading type is that the learner will be either marked as passed or fail after all the requirements have been ended. So in this diploma, OTHM Level 7 Diploma on Environmental and Sustainability Management, you have two different kinds of assessments or exam criteria that you will have to pass. So you have two kinds of assessments: formative assessments and summative assessments. So the kind of assessments that I am talking about, the kind of assessment that I have this session on, are basically called formative assessments. And you will have to submit a total of 6 formative assessments, because we have 6 units in total. And how many units do we have? Other details about those units, I will be coming to it in a couple of minutes. So yes, we have 6 formative assessments and we will have the almost 1 summative assessment. What are formative assessments? These assessments have basically been designed for the learners so that they are able to keep the assessors, or the ones who designed this course, are able to keep a track of if the learners are able to understand what they are trying to teach them, or the learners are able to meet the assessment criteria, or the learners are able to fulfill the expectations or the learning expectations that the institute has from them. And this is also, formative assessments are also basically ongoing assessments. So they will be ongoing with the diploma, and from time to time you will have to submit those assessments. You will have to complete them, to submit them, and then the assessor will check them. So we have in center or internal assessors, and then those assessments might also be sent to the external assessors, which are from OTHM. Okay, so these assessments, 6 of these assessments, are for keeping a track of how much progress or improvement you have shown. Okay, now when we talk about the summative assessments, we say that summative assessments are the ones that will be there on requirement. The institute might ask the center to provide these assessments for about the learners, so that they can also understand that the learners are actually coming on the criteria that they have designed. Okay, so when somebody asks how many assessments that we will have to provide, how many assessments that we will have in this course, so you can say that you will have 2 kinds of assessments: formative assessments and summative assessments. Okay, so next, okay, now if somebody asks how many units do we have in this course, how many of those units are mandatory units, how many of those units can be chosen and can be elected by the students themselves. So when you look at this picture, this screenshot, you see that we have a total of 9 units for this diploma. Okay, a total of 9 units. Out of those 9, the above 4 that you see. Walaikum assalam.
Yes, how are you? Everything is fine?
Yeah, alhamdulillah. Thank you.
I raised my hand actually, but there is no response, so I disturb you.
Okay, I must have missed it.
The one thing, as you mentioned, there is only pass and fail. But in
Okay.
the autumn which we received, that one catalog, there is mention level 3, level 4, level 5, 6, 7. What is that? If we compose the report like we address all the learning points and assessment criteria, so on the basis of that, they will be allow level 3, 2, 4, 5, 6, whatever. Or it will be mentioned only certificate the pass and fail.
Yes, you will also only be provided a pass or fail of that.
Correct. So what does mean of level 3, level 4, 5, 6, 7, which is mentioned in Autumn catalog? What does mean and what is the purpose of that?
Okay, so can you brief me where has it been mentioned? I have
If
opened.
you allow me, I will be share you the documents
Yes,
which we received.
please do that. You're allowed to do so. Can you tell me the page number that you're talking about?
Go up, please.
Okay, page number 4, and then
This one, level 3. Go down, please. Go down.
okay, sure.
This is the number. This is one. Level 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yes. Okay. So this means that this is for the assessor to see if the assessment that you have can be called as pass or can be called as fail. This means that some of the assessments will have better understanding, other will have less understanding, but at the end of it you will just be reviewed and you will only be told that okay, make these improvement in the assessments, and then you will be called pass or fail. You would not be provided as any units. So if Sir Asif, do you want to elaborate this a little more?
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. How are you? Fine.
Alhamdulillah.
Actually, this is marking level. Some, participant, they have, it's mean good knowledge. Okay, they are writing, answer in, I will say in well manner. Okay. So after that, it's also depend on sometime, some courses like if you check other courses NVQ level 7, level 6, there is a unit level. Okay, it's mean it's unit drop in level 3, level 4, level 6, but for OTHM level 7 diploma in environmental and sustainability management, it's all unit developed according to the level 7 diploma. So our all course, our all units will fall in level 7. This one actually they write like that. Okay. Actually, I have less time. If you have any other course related to the question related to the course, I can answer. Okay. Anyone?
Yes, for example, you are saying that level 2, level 3, level 4. So let's say we are composing our report and we are falling on under the level 7 category. So what are the impact will be imposed on our certifications if we get? For what does mean? What is the benefit of those level?
Actually, this is, if you meet the passing criteria, sorry for that. Actually, my daughter is with me, so he's distracting me. I will answer these all questions. You can continue this course. After that, I will.
Sure.
Okay, so let me continue the from where I was. Okay, so I said that we have 4 mandatory units, the names of which are fundamentals of sustainability. Yes, please.
No, go ahead, please.
Okay. So somebody else also raised a hand, I guess. Okay, let's move on. So the first unit title was Fundamentals of Sustainability. And this was discussed in the very first training that we had, okay, just a couple of weeks back. And then we had another training another week after on how to write its report. Afterwards, we talked about unit number 2, which is environmental science and energy transition. And then in the next session, we talked about how to produce its report. Now, this is the third unit, which is environmental management in organization. Its description has already been provided last Friday, and I am here to talk about its report now. Okay, so we are done with 2 units. We are on the third one, after which we will go on to the fourth unit, which will be about research methods, which will be about formulating a research proposal. After which we will go on to elective or optional units, out of which these two, the ones that I've highlighted here, the advanced principles of net zero and and sustainability as a business strategy, these are the ones that have been chosen, that have been termed as elective.
Okay, for example, the 4-1, which you told it is mandatory unit, on the downside, we need to be select only 2. It's depend on our choice, right?
Exactly. So basically, we on from our side are talking about these two, the ones that have been highlighted. However, if you have any issue with that, the learners have been provided an open chance. They can use any other of these optional units also. Okay, you can use delivering transformational change or any one of those. Okay, completely
Perfect.
up to you.
But we will be go through all the units, right?
Yes, you can attend the sessions definitely for learning purposes. You can.
Correct.
No, for now, we will be going through only 2 of these, okay? Only 2 of the optional units. However, because all of the learners, they are going to elect, they have elected for these. However, if we have somebody who elects for another course, which hasn't happened yet, we will be talking about that course also, okay? That unit also.
For example, we have here 4 candidates, which is of my colleagues also. They selected, for example, delivering of transformation. Let's say I selected the environmental politics. Another one selected the sustainable finance. So
Okay.
you guys are going to be discuss all the reports or just for only 2, which is need to be selected?
Exactly. We will be discussing all of those if somebody asks us to. Okay. For now, nobody has asked us to go for other of the units. For now, it has been decided that we will only be delivering presentations or trainings on this advanced principles of net zero and sustainability as a business strategy. This is the decision as of now. However, if some learner comes up and wants to opt for any other units, they're definitely more than welcomed.
Perfect. Very good. So did you discuss the candidate? They selected the 2, which is you yellow highlighted here. Nobody consulted with me. I am the also candidate of your trainings.
Honestly, because this is like honestly just the starting stage of the diploma, almost the starting stage of it. Therefore, because we haven't moved on to the training of the optional units as of now. Okay, we're talking about the mandatory units at the
Perfect.
moment. But
Perfect.
you still have time for that. Okay, you still
Perfect.
have time. If you want to go for another unit, definitely not a problem.
Understood. I will be go for all the units.
Okay, perfect. But yes, you will have to opt any 2 out of these 5. Okay, only
Yeah.
2 option units can be chosen.
Yes. Correct. 2 chosen, but I just need to know the upgrade my weak area or improvements
Yeah,
my.
definitely. If you want to learn, you want to attend the sessions, completely fine, not an issue.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so moving on to okay, I hope I'm clear about all the requirements, almost all the requirements related to the diploma, so that I can move on to the unit number 3.
Sure, please.
Okay, so when we talk about this unit number 3, which is fundamentals of environmental management in organizations, we say that we will be talking about environmental management and how it can be used by organizations. This is what the unit number 3 is about, and this unit has a few aims. So first aim, and that this unit has been designed with, is that the process wants to help different organizations on how they can analyze their environmental impacts, how they can determine those environmental impacts, and how they want to report those environmental impacts for better performance. Okay, so main aim is that we want to talk about environmental impacts, but we just don't want to talk about these. We want to report these, analyze these, understand these impacts, which will come under the umbrella of environmental management. The second aim shows that we want to talk about environmental aspects. Okay, so this word aspects and the word impact are different, two different things. Okay, so when we say that environmental impacts of an organization are to be considered, we say that environmental aspects are those things that are going to have some sort of an impact on the environment. It could be a process, it could be a machinery, it could be a product, it could be a service, it could be anything. Okay, so anything related to an organization, related to an industry that might very probably or potentially have an impact on the environment in the future or at the present will be called as environmental aspect. Okay, so when we talk about environmental management in organizations, we want to have a closer look at the environmental aspects of those organizations, and then as a result we want to determine their environmental impacts. So you see that all of these different aims are connected and related to each other. The third aim says that we want to also discuss different environmental management standards. Since we are on the topic of environmental management, we want to see how globally as well as locally or regionally, different types of standards, different types of regulatory situations, different types of regulations, different types of laws and policies are being used. So these will also be discussed. How environmental management, that specific topic of environmental management, is being governed with the help of different global as well as local standards. But we will be focusing on the international standards because we want to keep it generic for everybody. The next aim is that we want to see if an environmental management system has been implemented and an organization is doing some sort of environmental management, and it is using different types of tools and processes and technologies and different types of methodologies for that purpose, for managing their environmental aspects and impacts. Are there any pros and cons of those procedures? Do those procedures have any benefits? Do those procedures have any disadvantages? Or how to select one of the best out of those tools, and how to suggest and how to find out which one of these tools is the best suited for our organization's situation. And then by the end, the last aim says, which is basically the gist of this entire aim, that environmental challenges need to be tackled. We want to protect the environment. We want to promote sustainability. And in order to do so, this is how environmental challenges will be tackled by organizations through environmental management and different types of tools related to that. So these were the aims of this unit, that we want to see the environmental impacts, aspects. We want to talk about different standards. We want to talk about the goods and the bads of different types of tools. And we also want to see how all of these efforts can result in the betterment of the environment. Okay. So talking about the learning outcomes. So these learning outcomes are the ones that are related to unit number 3. So I want to tell you guys what learning outcomes are expected when we talk about unit number 3. So we say that we will be talking about environmental management. This must be clear up till now. We also want to talk about why organizations should be managing things and how organizations can be choosing to manage that, different types of processes and principles and procedures and steps that they will be using. We want to make it easier for them. Also, we want to help our learners understand how environmental management is done by organizations in real life. The next learning outcome is that we want to see and use different types of tools and assessment procedures. And we also want to see how many tools and assessment procedures are commonly used in the world to manage the environmental impacts for environmental management. And just like I said in the aims, we also want to see the pros and cons of each of these tools. The next learning outcome says that we want to see how organizations can improve their environmental performance, how that environmental procedure, environmental performance improvement can be developed, and how it can be delivered for the customers, for the stakeholders, and obviously for the society, and how that environmental performance can be better for the organization in terms of profit generations, but not just the profit generation. We're not just talking about the monetary aspects. We are generally talking about how these little steps on part of even one organization can have such magnanimous effects on the environment and can also be adding up to the sustainable development goals in the long run, which is the basic purpose that we have. When we talk about this unit, the last learning outcome says that we will see how different types of environmental data can be collected, how it can be analyzed, how it can be spread, how it can be disseminated, how it can be reported, and how it can be communicated, which also means dissemination of environmental data. So we want to talk about not just environmental management, not just the tools used for that, not just the environmental performance of the organization, but how that organization will manage its environmental data, because all of that ultimately leads to better environmental performance. So these were the learning outcomes that this unit number 3 has. Any confusion? Okay. So moving on to the assessment. The assessment basically starts, this report for unit 3 starts with being provided a scenario for the learners. The scenario basically says that you have been hired by Starbucks, which is almost one of us knows. A coffee outlet is an international coffee company, which is pretty famous. So Starbucks has hired you as an external environmental auditor. Okay, so the basic task that they have assigned you is that you will have to study, you will have to analyze, you will have to observe the environmental and sustainability commitments of Starbucks. They want you to see and observe how the organization, that is Starbucks, is doing when it comes to its environmental and sustainability goals. Has it been able to come up to the mark or not? They want you to report to them. They want you to come up with certain findings, certain recommendations, and certain suggestions on how they can make their environmental and sustainability performance better. Also, all of this can be termed to come under the umbrella of environmental management. So in short, to summarize this, I can say that Starbucks wants you to work as an external environmental auditor, and it wants you to contribute to how Starbucks can have a better environmental management systems, because they want to improve their environmental performance. So this reporting and findings and recommendations that you will be provided will be termed as an environmental report. So you have to generate an environmental report. Okay, so Starbucks has hired you as an external environmental auditor. But what is an external environmental auditor? Okay, so firstly, let me tell you all that environmental auditors can be internal, but they can also be external. However, in most of the cases, they are external. Did somebody raise a hand?
Yes, please. Let's say that, as you said, that Starbucks is hire me, let's say, as an external auditor for environmental, and they wants me to prepare the report with the suggestions, recommendations, and they need to be executed.
Okay.
But how comes? Let's say I does not know about the Starbucks. I does not know their objective, targets, goals, what they are doing. I does not know their business estimation. I does not know their impact. So how comes I need to be evaluate their system and need to be prepared the report 4,500?
Okay, look. So what we are doing is that we are researching, right? So we are learning. For that purpose, we will be searching online resources. Firstly, we will see what Starbucks is. Okay, we need to research and learn what Starbucks is, because it has been understood on part of the ones who created this assessment. They believe that we know what Starbucks is, so they only want us to create an environmental report. However, if we are not aware of what Starbucks is, what are their environmental goals, this report will contribute to that understanding also. This report is there for this purpose, that it would also help you understand Starbucks goals or any organization's goals for environmental performance. So through this report, you can also understand. However,
Correct.
yes.
Let's say I go through this report. I just now open this PDF file in my laptop. Let's say
Okay.
in Starbucks report, they written all the positive thinkings what they are doing on their businesses. And how comes we need to be like highlight the findings and recommendation we need to be improved? Let's say, for example, I'm composing the report, and I'm also always writing the positive points, and I'm suggesting somehow points with which they need to be improved in their businesses. So this report will be applicable.
No. Okay, listen. An environmental report is a critical report. Okay.
Mhm.
Do you know what a critical report is?
Mhm.
A critical report is the one which does not highlight the positive aspects. It also talks about the negative aspects. So this is entirely up to the learner how he handles the situation, how he handles, attempting this assessment report. If
Where
you
it is
just
written that critically evaluations of systematically evaluation, here is written only the recently joined Starbuck as external auditor, and you ask to stating and organization environmental stating commitment and to create a report with the findings and recommendation to the execution. There is
yes,
no,
yeah.
like in the scenario, there is no written this statement, critically
Okay.
evaluation or systematically evaluation.
Okay. The reason why I am here is to help you, dissect the scenario and help you better understand it. I will be adding on certain factors. Okay. I will be helping you with a few things. For example, I researched on what an environmental report is for the understanding of the learner. And I will tell you that an environmental report, what is an environmental report and how you can use it for your purpose. I am the one, the trainer is the one, the tutor is the one telling you that environmental report is a critical report, and this is what's going to help you with the report. Okay, so this is my purpose, this is the objective that I have, so that the things
Perfect.
that have not
Let's say, next question. Let's say I will be put in a Starbuck environmental report, all the negative points, or somehow I will be take a start from the positive points, and then I will be start the criticizing on the Starbuck system, let's say. And
Okay.
at the end, I will be provide that some recommendations or some findings, which is like just I am assuming, because the criticals and sensitive data, it will not mentions on Google or anywhere. They will be not shared. So
That's
let's say
right.
I'm always assuming Starbucks is doing this thing, ABC, blah blah blah. Okay,
You're right.
I'm writing, and I'm start criticizing to Starbucks because they are enemy, I know. So this report will be like acceptable.
Okay, look, it basically depends on the assessment criteria. Okay, so if, for example, you have been asked to talk about for example, let's take this. Okay, so if somebody asks you that you have to talk about how Starbucks is managing its environmental management. Okay, so when it comes to this question, you can talk about the positives and you can also talk about the negatives. However, there are certain other questions where you do not have this room. Okay, because honestly, yes, you're very much right. This is what we call as greenwashing, because organizations such as Starbucks and Pepsi and Coke, they have been greenwashing their activities. They are the biggest polluters in the world. They are the biggest greenhouse gas emitters in the world. But yet, what they do is they publish certain reports or certain environmental sustainability reports at the end of the year, and they think they are done with their responsibility. Okay, so this is a bias that we have. There is nothing that we can do about it. These organizations have been greenwashing their activities. They show themselves as the biggest advocates of environment, which they are not. Honestly, there's nothing we can do about it. Okay, but when you say that you're just going to talk about the negatives, please don't do that. Please take both the factors into consideration. That will be a more of a balanced approach. Okay, talk about the positives, but also talk about the negatives. But please stick to the scenario that you have been provided. If you have been told to just recommend a few things, do that. Okay, you don't have to go overboard. There are certain requirements that this assessment has. You meet those requirements and you're done with the assignment. Okay.
Perfect. So this report will be support us to finding the data related to the Starbucks, right?
Yes. No, basically, you will have to answer the criteria that you have. However, you will be keeping Starbucks in your mind. There are certain parts where you don't have to include Starbucks. Okay, you will generally be talking about any organizations, but for better marking, for better, for better reviews from the assessors, you can include Starbucks all the time. I think that will be a better approach.
Understood. This will become because it's related to the scenario. It should become.
Yeah. Yes. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. So So when you talk about the scenario, we have also been provided a supporting link here, which is the kind of a report or the fiscal year environmental and social impact report that Starbucks publishes. Again, your point that it publishes a report and it tells us how amazing everything is going, how it has been contributing to environmental goals, but the reality is pretty far from that, because we say the plastic pollution level that Starbucks has is huge, but because of the kind of a contribution that they have towards the global revenues, there's nothing we can do about it. There's not a lot we can do about it, and there's just a little bit of contribution that we can, which we are. Okay, so you can go to this link and you can see how Starbucks has its corporate social responsibility, how it has its environmental responsibility, how it has been fulfilling all of that, because Starbucks is one of those organizations that have been coming under criticism, especially since 2008, after all the financial problem that happened in 2008. Okay, so Starbucks has been coming under criticism, and you can go to the report to see their goals and also compare them. Okay, so I was talking about that, you have been called an environmental auditor, but what is an environmental auditor? So an environmental auditor is basically somebody who is there to come from an external source mostly. Okay, they're gonna come and they will be talking about your environmental performance, just like we have financial auditors. If, for example, you have been working in any organization. Okay, so Junaid Fida, did you raise a hand?
Yes, ma'am. I have a question. Apart from this scenario, will there be any checklist that we will be consulting? Like normally in real life, whenever we are conducting an internal or external audit, we will be provided with one checklist so that we can have a specific goal that what items need to be checked in that regard. So will there be any checklist in that regard, or only the scenario will be there?
No, there will be no. Actually, the criteria that you have are going to serve as your checklist. Okay, so the environmental auditor will just specifically be talking about those headings and subheadings. So you will be reviewing the performance of Starbucks in light of those criteria. This is how it can be done. It's as simple as that.
Okay, for example, learning outcomes number 1, they are saying that understand topic relevant to the environmental management and the reasons why organization should choose and manage them. Okay, there is a four criteria, 1.1 to 1.4. Okay,
Yes.
let's say I'm composing the report, but at the end of the report, I calculate the word counting. It comes less than 4,500. Okay, so for example, in that assessment criteria, they mention four different heading. So let's say I make a subheading and then subheading to overcome of the word counting. So it will be acceptable.
Okay, so maybe if you 4,500 words are the recommended word limit. Okay, you can exceed it a little bit, you can also be below it a little bit, not an issue. The basic primary goal that we have is that you come according to the assessment criteria. About 4,300 words, 4,200 words is an amazing limit. Okay, but you can go 4,600 words above. You can also reach 4,700. Not a very big issue.
The question is, I know that there is a 500 word up and down, 10 plus 5% plus and margin are there. But the thing is, for example, 1.1 to 1.4 learning outcomes assessment criteria are there. For example, I'm writing 1.1 to 1.4. I met that criteria, but
Okay.
I'm just writing under the headings of, let's say, for example, 1.1 is that defining the contents which is environmental management is undertaken with an organization linked Starbucks, like Starbucks. Okay. Under that, I am just writing on behalf of myself subheadings to met that criteria. Is it acceptable? Because there is written only 4 points, 1.1 to 1.4. But I am writing subheadings so that I can met that criteria. Is it acceptable?
Yes, if you're asking about adding subheadings, you can, but very clearly mention the heading so that it's easier for the assessor to see which point you're talking about. Okay, so that things do not get intermingled. Yes, you can go for subheadings, you can go for tables, you can go for figures, you can include infographics, you can include anything. All of this is for the sole purpose to act smart. You need to be very smart with how to attempt this assessment. Okay, so these are some of the very basic things that you are provided, how how to explore all of those, how to explore it from your perspective is completely up to you, okay? And how you attempt different assessments. Everybody is different. Every learner is different. All of us are unique.
Correct. One next question.
Yes.
And on the beginning of that scenario, there is no written, for example, the writing skill. For example, there will be executive summary will come, intro will come, or
Yes.
objective will come, aims will come, contents of table of contents will come. There is no mention any criteria. So if I will be right, is it acceptable?
Writing what? The executive summary?
Yes.
Yes, I think, okay, so as a student, when you, for example, and when I look at myself as a student also, the teachers always suggested us to start with a summary. This is one of the best approaches. And then when somebody moves in a very, proper manner, moving from the summary to the intro, and then at the end, somebody includes the conclusion, it gives a very nice, the nice view for the assessors, and the assessor will be able to understand that yes, the learner is able to understand certain things. It will be better for the outlook or the assessment.
Correct. So we can add, right?
You can definitely. If you do that, please make sure that you do not include a lot of words in the executive summary or the introduction, because that is not the main aim.
Yeah, it will be very smart short. Somehow
Yes.
you need to get an idea.
But again, I always suggest that please start with the introduction, because a lot of learners do not do that. They, just directly start with the assessment criteria. This does not give a very good outlook for the assessor. Okay. So where were we? We were on how an environmental auditor works. Okay, so environmental auditor basically determines the environmental performance of the organization, and it also reviews the business policies that this organization has. But we're not talking about the general corporate policies that they have. We're basically talking about the business policies related to their environmental performance, and it will also see how different operational controls are happening at the organization. And then we also want to, then just like you said, that we want to criticize an organization also. This is where we will be doing that. The environmental auditor is sitting over there, and the environmental auditor is basically an independent body. He is not under any sort of pressure, and he can take out mistakes. He can mark deficiencies. He can tell the organization very openly that these are the problems that you will have to solve. These are the areas where you lag, and you will have to improve these areas. This is what we are doing. We are environmental auditors, and we can talk about their improvements. We can talk about their positive points, but we can also talk about where do they lack. Okay, we're going to talk about their deficiencies also. Okay, so just like I said, we will have to formulate an environmental analysis report. Okay, so we're going to talk about how an environmental analysis report is formulated basically. So just imagine for a second, just suppose that we didn't have any learning outcome provided by the institution. We did not have any assessment criteria provided by the institution, and we were just simply told to create or formulate an environmental analysis report on Starbucks. What would you do? This is how you will take your outline in that case. Firstly, you will talk about the introduction. Then you will talk about different activities that it has, the impact that those activities have, how those activities can be mitigated if they have some negative impacts and externalities. How do we involve the public? How do we review the process? And then at the very end, you will be providing recommendations and then the conclusion. But this was just a supposed case. Since you have been provided the assessment criteria, those assessment criteria are very much closely related to all of these points. So what you need to do is simply start with the summary if you want, just a very, very tiny summary, move on to the introduction, very tiny introduction, and then start with the assessment criteria. And this will, definitely come according to these points that I've mentioned here. And then you will be just in a few bullets, in a few pointers, provide the recommendations that you have for the company. However, throughout this assessment, in every single heading, in every single assessment criteria, you will be suggesting things, So you will be making recommendations time to time. You will be making recommendations on and off. Okay, so even if you don't add the recommendations at the very end, that's fine. But adding a conclusion is always a bonus point. Okay, so now I would want to talk about which assessment criteria do we have, which questions that we have, because for any learner, we want to consider any learner to be a very layman, for example, and we want to see how a very simple learner will be able to understand his questions. If the learner has any problems with this, if the learner has any confusion related to the question, if, for example, you read the question, you read the assessment criteria, and you're like, oh my god, this doesn't make any sense to me, what do we do then? For that purpose, I'm here to break these questions into different parts as much as I could, as to as much understanding that I have, and then I will tell you how you will be answering these questions. Please remember, this is not a very exact and a very 100% sort of a guideline for you. This is just a very tiny effort to provide a little bit of help for you, so that writing an assessment is easier for you, for all the learners. Okay, so talking about the first question and the assessment criteria was that how environmental management is undertaken by different organizations, and what are the different contexts that are taken into consideration, what are the different contexts that are kept in mind by organizations when they want to perform environmental management. So by the word context, we mean different situations, circumstances, and different types of situations that different organizations have. Because when we say that there are millions of organizations and enterprises in the world, not even one enterprise is the same. Every enterprise has its unique circumstances. The situations are different. The kind of things that they have to deal with, the kind of challenges that they have, the kind of problems that they have to go through, and the kind of improvements that they will have to make are all different. Okay, so you will be talking about Starbucks specifically. So, just to provide a little bit of help, I would say that when we talk about Starbucks and any organization, firstly I will tell, if any organization is doing its environmental management, which context does it take into consideration. Any organization will see and analyze, and it will keep looking at what sort of decisions need to be made, what sort of decisions are already occurring, and what sort of decisions need to be made in the future for better performance, what sort of policies that they need to practice for better environmental management and better environmental performance, what social factors, CSR factors need to be considered, and do they need to talk about sustainability or not? Do we need to talk about the water? Which of these contexts needs to be focused the most? So now you have this list here. But when we talk about Starbucks specifically, when I researched on Starbucks, I found that Starbucks has just like any organization, has to deal with energy conservation issues, it has to deal with water conservation issues, but specifically talking about Starbucks, it has to deal with the regenerative agriculture and water issue, and also the plastic issue. Why am I talking about the agriculture? Because Starbucks is a coffee brewing or a coffee production company. So obviously, where does it get its coffee powder from? It is basically harvesting coffee leaves from different agricultural farms, and then it is sending it to its production centers, which is ground into different coffee powders, and then that powder is used for the production of coffee for the consumers. But the huge amount of agricultural harvesting that Starbucks has is just out of the limit. So it needs to be considered that their agriculture needs to be sustainable, their agriculture needs to be very much regenerative. So if they are harvesting a complete farm, they have wiped out an entire farm, it is their responsibility as an environmentally responsible organization to also plant new coffee plants at its back. Or maybe when it's not the season, they will have to plant some other plant at its place. So Starbucks has to deal with the agriculture issue, and it also has to deal with the water conservation issue, because the amount of water that it uses for the production of its coffee is huge. So they will have to see this context also. They will have to see the water context also if they want to manage their environmental impacts. And then they can have a cradle to grave impact. So if somebody is not aware of what a cradle to grave impact is, it basically says that from the birth stage of the company processes, of the company procedures, until the very end, when the process ends, which is like the grave stage, every single step throughout this supply chain needs to be considered. Okay, everything from from production to transportation, when everything is manufactured, when things are provided to consumers, when they are consumed, every single aspect needs to be considered. When we talk about Starbucks, they have water issue, they have plastic issue, and then they also have agricultural issue. These are the three areas where Starbucks has to work a lot. So as an environmental auditor, I'm saying that Starbucks needs to work. Yes, please.
Yeah. Will there be any percentage of like how much water or energy that they need to conserve? Like for because the goals of sustainability in different regions are different. Like what baseline we will choose, like for lead, well, or if we are working in Dubai, we'll go for Al Safat, or we'll go, or let's say we are working in Abu Dhabi, we are going for Estadama. And specifically, I mean, in this scenario, will there be any specific goal that, let's say, 10% energy conservation or water conservation will be there, or it will be generic?
Okay, so because Starbucks is an international organization, it is operating in so many countries of the world. You know, it's operating in every continent of the world. It's a very widely working company. So the goal could also be generic. If there are certain percentages, I'm not aware of that. You, for your assessment, can be researching and can be seeing how much water needs to be conserved and how much energy needs to be conserved. Okay, because it's an international organization, so your goal might also be a very generic one. For example, for Starbucks, the when we talk about the GHG emissions, it is said that you will have to reach the net zero goal. You know, so just like that, you could also have generic goals. You could also have specific goals when it comes to different companies, where different sort of countries where Starbucks is operating. You know, because it is extensively working in Europe, so it might have a different goal for that. I'm not aware of that. Okay. Okay. So next, talking
Okay, thank
about.
you.
You're welcome. Okay, so talking about different environmental management standards, we want to say how different kinds of standards and regulatory things are operational in today's world, and how these standards are very widely used by different kinds of organizations. Their names could be many. There could be a long list. There could be a laundry long list of these ISO standards and different standards also. But I have just mentioned four of these here. You do not necessarily have to stick to these, you know, but these are for reference. Okay, so different environmental management standards that we have in the world at the moment, the ones that are pretty successful also are, for example, the ISO family. When you look at the right of the picture, you will see the EMAS, which is in environmental management and auditing scheme, which is basically formulated by European Union. And then you have the Green Dragon environmental standard. You also have the environmental management. BS8 555 is the name of this environmental management standard. This is also a European or UK based standard. So these four of these are very widely used. You can be choosing any one of those. You will have to talk about, firstly, you will be mentioning how different kinds of standards are being used. You will be mentioning their names, and then you will be explaining those standards, their purposes, their objectives, how successful are each of those, which one of those is more successful, and what are the different kinds of goals that these standards have, and how these can be the most helpful in managing this and this aspect of our organization. Okay, so talking about Starbucks, I have found that Starbucks follows the ISO family standards the most. Okay, so when we talk about the ISO family standards, there are many, starting from the ISO 14000, ISO 14001, ISO 14010, and so on. So each of these have been divided into different types because they are used for different sections of the organizational operations, you know. So because when you choose that standard, which is the best for your specific segment of the organization, the results will definitely be better. The third assessment criteria is, we want to talk about different principles and processes that can be used.
At 1.2 learning outcomes assessment criteria, where you talk about the standard environmental management standard, as you said, you need to be explain how they are working, how it's objective, how it's interlinked. So this information will be relevant to the Starbucks at the end. Let's say I am composing one paragraph thoroughly, how standard are working and how it's interlinked with the Starbucks, and how Starbucks are implementing this standard in their system. So this will be enough, or we need to be right? What are the benefit? What are the pros and cons? And this standard, how it's working? Why we are composing this information in our report? If we can directly compose one paragraph to interlink with the Starbucks, it will not enough to write.
Okay, look, because the question says, the assessment criteria says that you have to talk about the most used standards in the world. Okay, the most used standards are many, they're not just one. Okay, so out of those, we will be talking about the one that is used by Starbucks, or two that are used by Starbucks, or even Starbucks when it is following more than two standards. We will be talking about those and how, because basically we're recommending how ISO standards or any standards can be helpful for Starbucks in improving its performance. So this definitely depends on the content, that you are writing.
Now here 1.2 is written, describe the most used environmental management standard at the fundamental level. So what are Starbucks are following? I will be just, this is my suggestion or this is my perception. I will be link those standard with the Starbucks, what they are following at the end of the report, what they are lacking. So I can be recommended these standards Starbucks do not have, and they can be implemented.
Okay, look, the kind of a content that you find online. For example, if you're searching, you're going through different articles and you find that it has been recommended by some researcher that even though when companies like Starbucks are using these standards, there are certain things that are still lacking, or maybe when they actually they say that they are following them, but they're not following them in real. Okay, so it definitely depends on the content that you find. You could be saying that, yes, ISO 14001 is being used by Starbucks. It is very successfully using, or it could make certain improvements for better following this standard for, better performance. Understood?
But let's say, as you said, that will be, that can ISO 14001, that can be improved, further improve in the Starbucks. But this is my assuming. I assumed that cases because those data is not available on anywhere.
Listen, when you are a researcher, you cannot just be assuming anything from your own self. You are assuming every single thing based on the researches or the data that has been provided online, and it is now up to you to search for that data, go into the detail of every single thing, and inshallah you will find it. It is entirely up to you. You will have to just scratch your head a little more and go for it. You will definitely find it.
Sure.
Go for better sources, inshallah you would. Okay, so
do you have that any link or any sites where we can found this data, because you already did the work?
Yes, what I do is basically that when I add up this presentation in the group, I will definitely be providing the references that I have. I have a separate document for that where I provided the references. Okay,
sure,
I can provide that in the group for you to go through those. Okay. So assessment criteria number 1.3 says that we have to talk about different principles and processes that can be used for managing problems related to environment, and how environmental management related problems can be better handled. Okay. So when we say that we want to overcome an issue, we want to overcome a challenge that has come at our hands as an organization. For example, if Starbucks has experienced some issue, for example, it is experiencing the water conservation issue, for example, its energy conservation is not controlled, for example, its carbon emission is not controlled, the kind of carbon emission that are happening are basically exceeding. So it will have to see how those problems need to be tackled with. But what are the different principles that will be kept in mind by that organization? So I, as an environmental auditor, will tell them that they can solve this problem by keeping in mind that sustainability needs to be your biggest preference, that you need to prefer the society, the welfare of the community, that you need to make sure that equity is preferred for every single individual of the society. So for example, when you're drawing coffee leaves from Africa, from a very remote corner of Africa, and you just say, okay, it's fine, I don't have to worry about Africa, because obviously it's a remote corner of the world. But when you talk about a European corner, you will be like very much worried and conscious about how your activities are occurring over there, so there should be justice and equity for every single citizen and every single part of this continent, of every single part of the world, for every single part of the planet that we are inhabiting. Okay, and then there could be different principles of precautionary substitution. So this basically means, as you all must have heard about the polluter pays principle, how different carbon taxation systems are being implemented nowadays, that you will have to pay if you are emitting, if you want to emit, if your processes are not in control and you cannot do anything about it, then you will have to buy those credits from somebody else. That's an entirely different topic, but yes, different principles and processes. Okay, so you just do not necessarily in your assessment have to follow these specific principles. The ones that you find might be entirely different from them, but they can still be very accurate. Okay, these are the ones that I as a person have mentioned. Okay, that these principles need to be followed when any organization wants to manage and solve its problems, when it wants to mitigate different issues. Again, 1.3, when I talk about Starbucks, I see that Starbucks has been using different principles and it has been trying to participate in the corporate social responsibility. It has been trying to promote justice and equity and welfare for everybody, and it wants to stay away from evil practices. So this is what they say. This does not necessarily have to be true, So Starbucks says that we have certain trainings and a lot of awareness campaigns and a lot of auditings and communication procedures and a lot of partnerships and stakeholders participation, because we want to have everybody on board. We want to have every single citizen on board. So they have a number of community programs, but the effectiveness of those community programs might be true and it might not be true. Okay, so when we talk about Starbucks, we say that they also want to consider their inputs. They want to see how those inputs are leading to different processes and what outputs they are having, how those outputs are being produced, and how those processes need to be managed for managing their environmental management problems. Assessment criteria 1.4 says that why some areas of environmental impact are more concerning for organizations and some areas are not. Again, this is very much related to the first assessment criteria, which said that what are the context in which any organization needs to manage its environmental performance. So we say that yes, every organization is different. Therefore, some areas might be of importance for it and some areas might not be important. For example, when we talk about any textile industry, its cotton production and the kind of cotton it is taking from the farms is something they need to be careful about. They need to be very careful about the sustainable production of those, sustainable production of textiles. But the same goal would not be the same for another organization, such as Starbucks. Starbucks does not have to worry about some, cotton production. But what Starbucks can be worried about is this huge problem of this menace of plastic, because it has been found that plastic, because when anybody is obtaining coffee from Starbucks, what do they get that coffee in? They get it in plastic bottles, plastic cups, right? So just imagine the amount of plastics that Starbucks is creating every single day. And since it's a very wide organization, we cannot even imagine the amount of plastic cups that are being produced by it. And as we all know, that plastic, single-use plastic, is non-biodegradable. And when we talk about Starbucks, it produces about 8,000 plastic-lined paper cups. Okay, now so this is a very ironic situation. Again, when I said that Starbucks and many other organizations of the world, they greenwash their initiatives. So what they did back in 2008 and afterwards is that they said, okay, we are going to now replace our cups with paper cups. But those paper cups are not real paper cups. Those are plastic lined paper cups. Okay, so from outside, they look like paper cups, but from inside they have been lined with plastic in order to confirm that they are very strong and sturdy. Okay, so that they do not break, because when coffee is put into them, they might soften. Okay, so yes, this is obviously for a purpose, but this is very ironic and very worrisome that they say that they have paper cups, but those paper cups are actually plastic lined paper cups. Okay, so they are producing 8,000 plastic lined single use paper cups every minute. Now you can do the maths yourself. Okay, and then when we talk about the carbon emissions, Starbucks says that it has this goal of going to net zero emissions, but God knows when all of that would happen. So yeah, I hope you understand that we are talking about why some organizations need to be worried about some areas and why some organizations need to be worried about another area. So it definitely depends on the kind of a working and the kind of an industry that this organization is from. Assessment criteria 2.1 says that if we want to basically conduct an environmental management, how different areas of it can be managed. It might also be possible that we want to only focus on one area. We might have 1,000 areas to work on, but we cannot work on every single area at the moment at the same time. Okay, so we will just be choosing a couple of those areas. So how can those areas, how can those sectors, how can those situations can be chosen by organizations? So it can be says that it will have to plan in advance. It will have to see how different processes are happening. It will have to check, it will have to review, it will have to have corrective actions when it comes to its environmental management, and then it will take help from internal audits or maybe external audits. It will be reviewing, it will be gathering data, it will be conducting reporting, it will be conducting analysis, it will be conducting different information surveys in order to see which area is the basic area that they need to work on, which area is a red area, which one is a green one, which can be ignored, and the red area that cannot be ignored. And this is where organizations are prioritizing and giving preference to some areas and avoiding and ignoring certain other areas, because there are certain things that are like a red light for us. They're just blinking and they need to be tackled immediately. However, certain other areas, they can be, they can wait. Okay, so this is how organizations are going to select different areas. Assessment criteria 2.2 says that we want to talk about different tools.
There is
Okay,
one
because
question related to 2.1. For example, describe how area of environmental management are selected by the organization. Now, the Starbucks having the more businesses in the world. So as you said, the audit report should be like specific related to the Starbucks. So can we in one specific area need to be target while preparing our report?
yeah, you can target any one of those. For example, it completely depends on you. Might want to just talk about the plastic throughout the report. You might just want to talk about the water problem throughout the report, or you might also want to include all of the main issues that have come to your notice, just like the water problem, the energy problem, the carbon problem, the plastic pollution problem. But you can also be choosing one of those. I don't think that will be any doing any harm.
No, for example, they have the different branches, and they different branches is having the different issues related to the environment. For
Yes.
example, let's say I selected in Qatar or I selected in UAE branch to target
Okay.
that area. So if we can specify that location or place that there is lacking of the that organizations, so it will be enough, or just openly we will talk about.
Okay, look, the word area here do not talks about any geographical location. Okay, it does not want to talk about Pakistan, India, or any area. By the word area, we means the segment or portion of the organization, the kind of context of the organization where they have their working. For example, different kinds of operations that the organization has. Okay, so by this we don't mean the location or the geographical area. However, if you want to choose any one specific area, this is fine. For example, if you want to choose Qatar, for example, the problems and the kind of environmental impacts that Starbucks is having in that area might be entirely different from the impacts it has in Indonesia. Because obviously it depends on the geographical location also. Because, for example, in Qatar, because the water problem is very evident, because of the kind of a cost that water has, though we can say that the water problem needs to be tackled a little more when it comes to Qatar. So when you mention different names, that's fine. You can be mentioning regions, you can be mentioning countries, you can be mentioning continents. That's completely fine.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay. Talking about 2.2. Okay. So we are conducting environmental management, but just like anything else, when we want to conduct something, when we want to do something, there are certain tools that we need to use, because we just do not start just like that. We need certain tools and we need certain methodologies to start with that. So we have some very, very famous environmental tools that everybody listens, that everybody hears about, such as environmental impact assessment, such as life cycle assessment, such as risk management, carbon footprint, ecological footprint, or the sustainable impact assessment. So sustainable environmental impact assessment. So all of these are very, very famous. For example, if you're somebody who, if anybody hasn't even heard of any one of these, he must have heard about environmental impact assessment, because this is as one of the most widely recognized and widely used tool in the world at the moment. So an environmental impact assessment tool is the one that understands, it analyzes, and it sees the kind of impacts that your developmental activity, that your process, that your product, that your activity has on the environment. So all of these tools that have been mentioned here, there are many more other tools also. You will find them online, but these are some of the environmental management tools that can be used to make this process better, that will help us with environmental management, that will help us manage the environmental impacts of the organization. Okay, so you will be seeing now that Starbucks uses which of these tools, and which of these tools are the most famous when it comes to Starbucks. So Starbucks might also be using a lot of these. Okay. Assessment criteria number 2.3.
Okay, one question is, let's say 2.2, you said that explain how commonly used environmental management assessment tools are used by the organization. So whatever I will be compose in my report, it should be referenced by someone, or I can be like, let's say according to Mr. ABC, he said the Starbucks does not have this system. It is enough.
No, exactly. Okay, listen, just like I said, you are a researcher at the moment. Okay, you are not some XYZ, you are a researcher, and you can also not say something from your own. You cannot just wake up one day and say that the Starbucks is doing fine, Starbucks is an amazing organization when it comes to environment. No, every single word, every single point that you add in your research, every single thing that you add in your report needs to be backed with solid references, solid article based references. For example, you can say that the researcher in this article, his name could be, for example, Tom says that Starbucks has been doing this, but you do not necessarily have to mention the names. You can just say it out there. You can say that Starbucks is doing this, and then you will be providing the reference at the very end of where you took this from, so that there is no plagiarism. If you add something which is not backed by support or citations or references, this will lead to plagiarism.
Perfect. Let's say one thing. Mostly, if let's say I know the reference of that person who says about the related to the Starbucks, so I can mention it. Let's say, for example, according to Mr. ABC, or he stated that article number this, page number this, and this is the statement. It is written there. It will be like the positive impact on my report, or at the end I need to be given.
Okay, so there are different styles that people use. Okay. For example, certain people do this, that in their paragraphs, they provide in-text citation. Okay, what is in-text citation? For example, I will say, commonly used environmental management tools are EIA and SEA, full stop. And then in a small bracket, I will be providing the name, the name of the researcher, the name of the scholar, with a comma. I will be providing the date of publication of the research. There are many different kinds of in-text citations also, but the one that we will be using is Harvard referencing.
However, it will become at the end of the report. No, my question is totally entirely separate. For example, I'm saying in the paragraph where I'm addressing the 2.2, I can be referred to someone who's stated related to that commonly used environment management system regarding to Starbucks. So I can be refer on this paragraph, or at the end I need to list down the referencing.
Yes, I totally get your point. Okay, I'm coming there. What I mean is that, for example, there's some famous international body. For example, when you talk about United Nations, there's some famous researchers, very famous researcher, Maslow. Okay, for example, Maslow was a psychologist. If you use the name of Maslow, if you use the name of some famous international governing body, if you use the name of United Nations, if you use the name of UNDP, this will definitely leave a very good impact.
Correct.
Yes, this can be done, but it is not a necessity. But I would suggest, in order to stay brief, in order to stay within the word limit, do not do this. Just state the point that you have, and of course, obviously, you will be providing the references at the very end. This will do the purpose.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay, so talking about talking about assessment criteria number 2.3. This is a very straightforward sort of a question, that we have to talk about the purpose of an environmental management system. Okay, why do we need an environmental management system? So I think anybody would like to answer this, because this is very simple and straightforward, that why are we doing this? Why are we caring for the environment? Why are we managing our impacts? What in the first place is the reason for this? Why do we need to do all of that? I mean, we could just simply be ignoring all of that. We could just simply be ignoring the sustainability and environment. But the sole purpose of why all of us are here with this diploma, why do we have this diploma? Why do we have the studies related to environment? Why do we have people worrying about sustainable development goals so much? Is obviously because of these problems that we are experiencing in the world today. The problems that we are experiencing when it comes to the depletion of resources, when it comes to the water use, when it comes to how the biodiversity, is being degraded, when we talk about how much carbon emissions have led to greenhouse gas emissions, leading to climate change, leading to global warming, the problem of ozone depletion, the problem of waste generation, which according to me is one of the biggest problems of today's world, including the generation of single-use plastics. All of these are very much interconnected, but all of these are like the problems and the areas of worry, the challenges that we have at hand that we will have to worry about. But these 5 that I provided here are the most important ones. However, this list is very long. You could be adding any one of the problems and purposes why we are conducting environmental management system. Why do we have environmental management systems in the first place? Because the world is experiencing a very rapid decline in its environmental quality, and we need to do something about it. So there's this one effort that we are doing. That effort is called environmental management systems. Okay, 2.4 assessment criteria says that just like I talked about different tools, just like I talked about EIA, LCA, carbon footprint analysis, cost benefit analysis and stuff. So what are the different pros and cons, disadvantages and advantages of these tools? Okay, so for example, if you want to include this in the report, you might want to give a table. In that table, you can be mentioning the tools that you have chosen. Okay, the kind of tools that you want to include, any tool that you want to include. It could be 5 tools, 7 tools, or maybe 10, any tools, completely up to you. And then you will be providing the advantages and disadvantages that those tools have according to researchers. Okay, so for example, I just mentioned one of those here. I just talked about life cycle assessment. I said that it is a very important tool, as the name suggests, that it talks about the life cycle assessment. It talks about the entire life of the product or processes. It starts from the cradle, it goes till the grave. Therefore, it talks about the entire supply chain, the entire value chain. Therefore, when an organization uses this specific tool, when an organization uses the LCA tool, one of the biggest benefits that they can be getting is that their supply chain will be optimized. The working of their supply chain, the working of their value chain, the working of their processes, starting from the initial stages till the very end, will be optimized. They will be maximized. They will be becoming the most efficient. Therefore, this is a very important tool. But it also has a disadvantage, that is very time consuming. Obviously, when it is a life cycle assessment, it will be starting from the scratch. It will going from the very beginning. It will be moving through different stages and steps, and it will be ending up at the final stage. Therefore, it obviously takes a lot of time. It's also a very tedious process, because it's also very detailed. But it's also very expensive at the same time. It requires a lot of cost for this operation. And then you could have any Other tool that you have chosen, you will be talking about its advantage, its disadvantage. This could be in the form of a table. This could be in the form of a bullet. This could be in the form of a paragraph simple. Okay. Completely up to the learner. Assessment criteria 3.1. Okay. It says,
The
it basically,
2.4, as you said, that pros and cons we need to be right. So while writing the advantage or disadvantage need to be addressed the organizations which is mentioned in the scenario Starbuck, or openly we can be right advantage or disadvantage of these tools are there.
okay, you can talk about any tool in general, any organization in general, and no organization at all. Also, you can be included Starbucks, but if you don't Starbucks, if you don't add Starbucks, it is also fine. Please do not worry about this scenario so much. It has been provided for maximum efficiency, but if some learner does not mention this organization at any point, I don't think that will make any difference. Okay,
Because
do not worry about it.
mostly there is no chance to link with the scenario, because there is
Exactly.
some limitations are there to search on the data, as you said, need to be searched on Google, but some data will not be there. So
Yes,
whatever we have we can be written, or whatever we do
exactly.
not have we can talk about openly, right?
Exactly. The point is that you need to make some sense. Your answer needs to make some sense. It needs to have a connection with the assessment criteria. It needs to have a relation with what the scenario is. But if at certain points it is not able to specifically talk about the organization, I don't think this will make any difference. Okay. So there are certain questions that a student I can understand. There are certain questions where you do not have any relation to the organization. That's fine. Okay, so talking about 3.1, this talks about post project reviews. Okay, what do we mean by a post project review? It means that after the review of the environmental management process, after the review of the environmental performance of an organization has been done, the environmental audit has been done, and then afterwards, there's also another review which is called as the post project review. How do we conduct that post project review? What is it? And how do we review that? And how do we learn different lessons from that? How do we collect different lessons from that, so that those lessons that have been learned out of the audit, out of the post project review, can be used to help us with our activities, and also help us guide our stakeholders, the people or the parties that are linked with us, on how they, in relation with us, uh, engage
अस्सलाम वालेकुम इमरान भाई। इमरान भाई इधर ही हैं आप?
अस्सलाम जी मैं इधर ही हूँ। मैं थोड़ा सा साइड पे हो गया था, सॉरी।
तो क्या अभी करें, वो तो चली गई हैं अभी।
बस मैं भी जाता हूँ फिर। मैं थोड़ा सा मैं थोड़ा सा ना मोबाइल साइड पे रख के मैं थोड़ा सा बाहर चला गया था, तो मैं अभी वापस आया। मैं थोड़ा सा बाहर चला गया था, सॉरी फॉर दैट।
तो क्या अभी करना चाहिए? वो तो मेरे ख्याल चली गई, उनका इंटरनेट नहीं चल रहा है या कोई प्रॉब्लम आया है।
बस ठीक है, हो गई है जो भी क्लास थी वो हो गई है, डाटा मिल गया है, खुद बना लेंगे हम। ये
नहीं,
तो
अभी तो हम
काम था
लर्निंग
मेरे से।
आउटकम्स लर्निंग आउटकम 3 पे पहुंचे हैं। 3 स्टार्ट किए, अभी 3.1 3.2 3.4 4 ये हैं और 5 उसकी हैं, 4 की।
सर वो डॉक्यूमेंट है पड़ा, हम डॉक्यूमेंट से सारा देख लेंगे। ऑलरेडी उससे ही कर रहे हैं, तो ऐसा कोई
यार
मुश्किल
दियो,
नहीं है ये। ऐसा कोई
सानू
मुश्किल
भी
नहीं है
दियो ना, फिर
डॉक्यूमेंट।
ਅਸੀਂ ਵੀ ਬਣਾਈਏ, ਸਾਨੂੰ ਤੇ ਬਣਾना नहीं आ रही।
अच्छा, चलो वेने आ फिर, कोई ना कुछ करने आ फिर।
ਦਿਓ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਹੀ ਡਾਟਾ, ਦਿਓ ਅਸੀਂ ਵੀ ਬਣਾਈਏ।
अच्छा, ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਦੱਸਾਂਗੇ ਤੇ ਤਰੀਕਾ ਦੱਸਾਂਗੇ ਡਾਟਾ ਕੀ ਦੇਣਾ ਹੈ।
ਕੀ ਜੀ?
ਤਰੀਕਾ ਦੱਸਾਂਗੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ, ਫਿਰ ਡਾਟਾ ਕੀ ਦੇਣਾ ਹੈ।
ਹਾਂ ਤਰੀਕਾ ਦੱਸੋ ਯਾਰ, ਇਹ ਤਰੀਕਾ ਦੱਸ ਦਿਓ ਤੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਆਸਾਨੀ ਹੋ ਜੇ।
बस ठीक है, दे देना, कोई मसला नहीं। ठीक है फिर।
ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿੱਧਰ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ ਇਮਰਾਨ ਭਾਈ?
मैं सऊदी अरब।
अच्छा अच्छा, माशाल्लाह।
जी। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਿੱਥੇ
सऊदी
ਹੁੰਦੇ
नाम
हो?
को प्रोजेक्ट पे?
नहीं, न्यू प्रोजेक्ट है।
अच्छा अच्छा, माशाल्लाह।
जी जी। तो आप कहाँ पे होते हैं?
मैं सर जी कतर होता हूँ, करामा में।
अच्छा अच्छा, सही है, माशाल्लाह।
तो अपना व्हाट्सएप नंबर शेयर करें, मैं आपसे कांटेक्ट करूंगा।
जी जी, जरूर जरूर। व्हाट्सएप नंबर मैं ग्रुप ग्रुप में है ना आप?
जी जी, ग्रुप में हूँ।
हाँ, ग्रुप में है मेरा, मैं दोबारा शेयर करता हूँ आपके साथ। ग्रुप में अभी मैं मैसेज करता हूँ।
मैं आपसे कांटेक्ट करूंगा, फिर रिपोर्ट को फाइनलाइज करेंगे। यार आपने कोई पहली जमा करवाई है? कितनी हो गई है?
मैंने तो अभी तक दो दो समझ करा ली हैं।
अच्छा, तो चलें, बड़ा अच्छा है। फिर ओवरव्यू एक मिल जाएगा तो अच्छा हो जाएगा।
जी जी। अब एक्सेप्ट है नहीं है ये नहीं पता, ये तो असेसर को ही पता होगा। हमने तो खाली बना के दे दिया है बस।
नहीं नहीं,
बाकी तो उन्होंने फीडबैक देना।
वो तो देख लेंगे ना, कि एक एक ओवरव्यू मिलना चाहिए, बनानी कैसी है, क्या है उसका, बस बाकी चीजें तो कर ही लेता है बंदा।
जी जी। यही है आपका नंबर, पाकिस्तान वाला?
जी,
0331 वाला है, 0334 वाला है?
दोनों ही मेरे हैं।
अच्छा अच्छा, ठीक है, मैं मैसेज कर देता हूँ। मैसेज कर दिया मैंने आपको।
जी जी, आ गया। तो इसके अलावा इमरान भाई क्या मसरूफियात हैं, और क्या कुछ कर रहे हैं?
जी जी, मैं जॉब कर रहा हूँ यहाँ पे।
अच्छा अच्छा।
और जॉब भी कर रहे हैं, और बस ये जुम्मे वाला दिन होता है तो ये और भी बहुत से काम होते हैं, और भी बहुत से पंगे लिए हुए हैं यहाँ पे। अभी मैं काम भी कर रहा था साथ में, कपड़े वगैरह भी धो रहे थे, तो मैं ये छोड़ के बाहर चला गया, मुझे पता नहीं चला कब खत्म हुआ एंड हुआ। सुन रहा था, ये अचानक बाहर चला गया।
सही है।
चले फिर, हाँ।
ठीक
तो
है जी
क्या
फिर।
करना चाहिए इमरान भाई? कोई आ नहीं रहा अभी तक तो।
नहीं, अभी लीव ही करना चाहिए, टाइम तो हो गया वैसे, 1 घंटे की क्लास है, 1.5 घंटा तो वैसे ही हो गया।
आज वैसे आपको मजा आया क्लास का?
जी जी, आज मजा आया भी है। और ये तो सारी चीजें शुरू शुरू की थी, जो है उस बेचारी को ऐसे खाम फसाया हुआ आपने।
नहीं, एक कोई बंदा ये कोर्स इंस्टीट्यूट से है, उसने बड़ा अच्छा सवाल किया, हमें तो बड़ा समझ आया उसमें।
बिल्कुल ऐसे ही है। वो खुद भी मेरे ख्याल में वो होंगे ना, इंस्ट्रक्टर होंगे, तो उन्होंने उसी हवाले से सवाल पूछे हैं जो उनको भी दरपेश होते होंगे, तो पूछते होंगे उनसे।
मेरा ख्याल क्लास को खत्म करेंगे।
फिर खत्म करते हैं और क्या।
चलें फिर, आप और मैं अगर लीव कर गए तो पीछे तो रह ही कोई नहीं गया। ये कोई हिना इम्तियाज हैं, ये तो मेरे ख्याल इंस्टीट्यूट से ही हैं।
जी जी, ये भी इंस्टीट्यूट से हैं, फायर सेफ्टी वाले भी इंस्टीट्यूट से हैं, बाकी हम 3 ही हैं, और हम 3 अब लीव कर जाएंगे तो बस खत्म ही हो जाएगा सब कुछ। या पूछ लेते हैं ग्रुप से।
जी जी, एक मैसेज मेरे ख्याल कर दें ग्रुप में, फिर छोड़ते हैं, फिर नमाज का टाइम भी हो गया।
बिल्कुल।
Assalamu alaikum. Sorry for the inconvenience. Can you guys hear me?
वालेकुम अस्सलाम। यस।
Yeah, some technical issue happened. I'm sorry, I'm back. Apologies. Okay. So we were on point 3.3, I believe.
3.2
Okay.
analysis.
Okay. I hope an issue doesn't happen again. Okay, so Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
So one thing, Miss Aisha, sorry to disturb you.
Yes.
Actually, right now we almost completed our training hours. So can we do it to next week to discuss remaining 2 learning outcomes?
Okay, so basically we have 2 entire hours for the training. So we haven't completed the 2 hours yet, but yes, I'll be very fast. No, we cannot just, delay it for the next week because we have some other topic for the next week. So just let me be a little quick. I'll inshallah finish this within 5 to 10 minutes. So bear with me.
No, that the remaining learning outcome 4 are remain, and that here also assessment criteria 3.3 and 4 are remain. So what I suggest, like let's say next week before that session we started, we can start this discussion, and then later on we discuss the presentation.
Since I am not the one to take the next week's presentation, there's another trainer taking the presentation next week, So I don't think if that would be convenient for me and for her as well. So let's just tolerate for another few minutes because I have compiled the 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, 4.5 in one slide, because all of those are very close to each other.
Okay, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so when we talk about point 3.2, we say that there are certain key elements, there are certain programs for environmental performance that we need to have. And how can we have that program? How can we develop that program? What are the different ingredients and key elements that we can be using, and how we can mix up those ingredients and elements for coming up with one of the best programs for environmental performance. So we say that we can have a very concrete policy. We need to have clear targets. Our operational control needs to be very close to environment. We need to prevent our actions from harming the environment. We need to have emergency preparedness for making sure that our activities and processes and services do not harm the environment. We need to keep training. We need to keep training our employees and stakeholders on the entire situation. We need to have some proper decision-making planning and so on, in order to make sure that our environmental performance is maximum, it is optimum, and how we can use different programs for that. These are the key elements that can be used. So these are just a few of those key elements that I have mentioned here. Talking about 3.3, we say that organizations' environmental performance can be optimized if it uses a program. So how can that program be used? What are the different ways for using that program? So there could be many different kinds of programs and initiatives. There are many programs out there, out of which a few are these. For example, you can be using the green personnel training program, which means that the personnel, the employees are trained, they are taught on different environmental aspects, and they are also trained on how they can go green. They are taught how to use different innovative technologies in their processes for so the technologies that are more green and more sustainable, how different sustainable practices can be embedded in the organizational procedures, how different citizens or the community can be included so that environmental performance can be improved, and how the stakeholders need to be included, how the partners need to be there. So these are different names of different kinds of programs that are used internationally for optimizing any organization's environmental performance. Okay, so when we talk about Starbucks, there's this link that I provided that you can get after I upload the presentation, that Starbucks 2010 and 2020 and so on, they have this fiscal report in which they have talked about how they are taking different initiatives and how they are using different programs for improving their environmental performance. Okay, so 3.4 talks about how that after the program has been made, after the program has been chosen, how that program can be implemented. This is the stage where we need to implement. So it is basically a gist of the last two slides. Okay, so this says that we, after having our interested parties, after overcoming internal and external issues, after having a very proper environmental management system, we need to move on to enhanced environmental performance. We need to have our compliance obligations. We need to have a situation or a state where we can say that we have reached this stage where we have improved our environmental performance. But for that, there is a very specific stage and procedure that you will have to use. You will have to move on from the left and move towards the right. However, in the middle, there's an entire procedure. You will have to support your operations according to environment. You will have to evaluate yourself. You will have to plan. Your leadership needs to be optimum in order to have best compliance obligations. Okay, so just like I said, I have compiled these 4 to 5 assessment criteria because they were pretty similar to each other. Okay, so this environmental criteria says that we need to see how to when you will be assessing the report, you will see that this assessment criteria talks about how to collect environmental data, how to store that data, how to retrieve data, how to analyze data, how to disseminate data. So I have, that is why I have collected them here as one slide. So we say that if we want to see, after environmental management has been done, after post project review has been done, after environmental performance programs have been taken into place, how do we improve our environmental data performance? How do we collect that data? So there are different processes and different kinds of tools that we can use. We can observe, we can have interviews, we can have surveys and experiments in order to collect environmental data, in order to see the trends and what is happening when it comes to environmental data. Then we can store that. Obviously, just like we store any other data, we can store environmental data in the form of cloud, object and database storage. And then how do we retrieve that data? We retrieve that through data mining, through optic databases and so on. And how to analyze that data? You have, for example, when you conduct a research or a thesis, you use ANOVA very mostly. So a statistical tool such as ANOVA can be used. And for dissemination that information, because all 4 of the above were the ones that we were personally doing. But when it comes to the public, how do we tell the public what we have found? How do we disseminate and spread this information to the public? What we would do is that we would have certain platforms for spreading that information and data that we have conducted and the one that we have collected about our organization. Such as, we will see that we will conduct different workshops and conferences and marketing, and we can have social media for this purpose. We can use the mainstream media for this purpose in order to tell the people that this is our environmental performance based on the data that we have collected. So as a reference, I have provided the environmental and social impact report by Starbucks. So this is one of the examples of how organizations disseminate their data, just like Starbucks disseminates and spreads its data with the help of different reports, different fiscal reports for different years. Okay, then after that, talking about 4.4, it says how do we, okay, um, I moved on from assessment criteria 1.1 and now we've reached the very end. So from the start, we talked about how environmental management can be done, how different programs can be used for environmental performance, how post-project review can be done, how our different programs can be done, how do we collect data, how do we tell other people about our data, and now is one of the last stages, which say how do we verify and assure environmental projects? How do we verify that the data that we collected was correct or not? How do we classify? How do we see if this data is fair or not? So for this purpose, most of the times, because this verification is going to be pretty strict on the organization, this is mostly done by third party verification sources, such as one of the most widely used ones is called ETV. It is environmental technology verification. It is an organization which provides its services to people and organizations internationally to help you verify and assure your environmental projects, or to assure and verify the performance of your environmental management programs and if you met the criteria or not. Okay. So we have come to the citation again. So just like every single time, I talk about how your report needs to be of almost 4,500 words. You can include diagrams, references, and appendices. You can include tables and anything you want. Your references needs to be Harvard references. It can be in-text references plus the list, or it can just be the reference list that is provided at the end for a reference. For example, this is how references are provided. One of the best approaches would be to give the references in alphabetical order, starting from A going to Z. Okay, so how you can attempt best assessment, you can keep a very specific goal in your mind, and then you can break that goal into chunks, plan and proofread the assessment, and then attempt it and come to the end, and then expect that you will be getting a pass criteria. So by this, we come to the end of the session. Do you have any questions?
Yes, there is one question. As you said that plagiarism or malpractice issue will come if you will be like written something. So for example, I found some data which is very informative on a Google, and I will be just copy and paste in my report. This will become in a plagiarism.
Yes, definitely. So what you can do for this is that if you provide the same exact lines in quotation marks, those wouldn't be considered plagiarism. For example, one of the most easiest examples would be of the definition of sustainability. Okay, so the definition of sustainable development that we have is very common, and it is that we want to have the development that does not compromise the ability of the future generations to meet their needs while having our needs met in the present, something like that. So this is a very exact statement, and this is the exact definition which is used by a lot of people. So if you give the exact definition in quotation marks, this will not be considered as plagiarism. However, if it is given without quotation marks, this will be considered plagiarism. Just like that, any other line that you just copy or cut and paste, copy and paste, that will be considered plagiarism. You will have to write it in your own words. You can paraphrase it. You can, use different words. You can use synonyms. You can use different expression for that.
Perfect. What are the system in place to check the plagiarism or malpractices as per the
Okay.
author procedure?
Okay, so it is entirely up to the assessors. I am a trainer. I cannot exactly say, but definitely they would be using different tools that are available for assessing plagiarism. For example, just like our teachers in university used to use this tool called Turnitin. Okay, this is a software which is used for detecting plagiarism. They upload the document on it, and it gives you percentage of how much plagiarism is present in this specific document. Okay,
How
so
much
the assessor.
how much percentage are allowed or acceptable plagiarism or similarity index?
It has not been mentioned anywhere, but I think it has also been said that your work needs to be plagiarism free. So mostly on an international level, I think 20 to 30% of plagiarism is accepted, but above that, it shouldn't be, exceeding 50%. But if it goes above 50%, it is considered highly plagiarized.
Okay, so what are the process? Let's say I submitted my assignment to institute, and first they will be review, and then later on they will be forward to external assessor. This is the process.
Exactly. So when you forward your assessment to whichever person you are in contact with, that person will be forwarding it to the internal assessor. Internal assessor will go through it. He will check it. He will provide comments on it. And the present in assessment, if it has any issues, any problems, it will come back to you. Okay. So they will be sending the assessment back to you so that you improve those problems. So they will say that these criteria have not been met, so you improve those criteria, and then you will, after improvement, send it back to the institution. And after it has been accepted entirely, after it has been improved, it will be, if asked by the external verification sources, it will be sent to them.
Okay, let's say I send the report to your internal institute, and they satisfied and they forward to external assessor. And external assessor having some comments on that, they will be returned back to us, or there is a any issue. Let's say they said, okay, this candidate is not met that criteria and need to be attempt or re-attend the classes, like something like that. What are the process?
Okay, so I cannot guide you on this because I myself am not very aware of this internal process, because obviously this is kind of a confidential process. So I think Sir Asif will be able to help you with this a little more.
Confidential process, like it will be transparent. The candidate should be well aware so that we can be submit our
No,
presentation.
it is confidential because I am a trainer. My responsibility is to teach you, is to train you on the contents of the diploma, how it is being sent to assessors, how the assessor reviews it, how it is sent to the external verification sources, is not something that's related to me. I hope you understand.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, so anybody else who has any questions? I hope, okay, nobody's coming forward. So with this, I think we need to bring the session to an end. It was very nice interacting with all of you. I think it was one of the best sessions for me also, because you guys are very interactive today. A lot of other times it's mostly one way sort of a communication. I'm just talking and nobody comes ahead. But today was very nice interacting with you all. I hope that the queries that you had, the concerns that you guys had, have been cleared. If any more queries that you have, please feel free to contact Sir Asif or anybody who's concerned with this, or you can even leave your queries in the group, and inshallah you will be replied, hopefully. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Aisha. You address all the issues, and I really enjoy and I appreciate it to your effort which you put on the training sessions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I agree. Allah Hafiz.
Thank you.
Thank you. Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.